Hello everybody and welcome back to another Kings of War Battle Report. I'm Visibly Riley, and this week we have Goblins versus Free Dwarves in a 2300 point battle of Invade. First up, we have my opponent's Free Dwarf army. It opens with two regiments of Free Dwarf Berserkers, both of whom have Pathfinder. Then we have a regiment of Free Dwarf Rangers with the Chance of Hate, Hernius' handpicked Rangers as well, granting them Vicious, Stealthy, and Elite Ranged. Then we have a troop two regiments of Free Dwarf Brock Riders, all of whom took the Pathfinder upgrade, and then the troop has Skirmisher's Boots, so they are also nimble. Then we have 2 regiments of Massive Hunting Packs, followed by Sverri Egalax, which is the named Brock Lord, and Garrick Heavyhand. Following that, we have my opponent choosing to take Eric's Mallets, which is, of course, the Free Dwarf formation. It involves 3 regiments of Free Dwarf Shield Breakers, all of whom my opponent has upgraded to have Throwing Massives, and then Eric himself, the Free Dwarf Lord, and my opponent has given them Wings of Honey Maze and the Lord's Jewel, granting them Aura Iron Resolve for Dwarves only. Now, this formation is a pretty interesting one, I think. Now, I think the Shield Breakers, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the Shield Breakers can swap out to not have Scout in Clash 22, but of course in Eric's Mallets they have to have Scout, so they do. But they also gain Nimble. And Nimble is, of course, a very powerful rule. It doesn't really matter if you're speed 4. It's just that good of a rule. And then Eric himself gains Scout here, so that is a Flying Scouter, always a good thing in any army. So anyway, let's move forward onto my Goblin list. This is the same Goblin list I brought to a tournament back in December or January. I'm not sure exactly when. It was after Clash 22 came out, so sometime around then, but before the FAQ. Actually, it might have been even before that, before December. Wow. Anyway. So, I brought this to a tournament, but unfortunately all the pictures just didn't turn out, which sucked because I, at the last second, threw this together. I built the army in about 3 days, as in I did all the base work. I painted a bunch of the models, although I did have a fair number of them already painted, which you'll be able to tell the difference. It's the blue and any goblins that have a lot of blue on them, I already had painted. But anyway, yeah, I threw this army together. I really liked it. It's super fun, but unfortunately those pictures didn't turn out, so I thought, screw it. I'm going to bring him to another game. Why not? It opens with 3 hordes of Rabble, followed by a regiment of Rabble. Then we have 2 troops of Fleabag Riders, 3 War Trombones, 2 Mop-Up Launchers, 2 Wingets with both having bombs away, a Goblin Slasher with Aura Rampage Melee D3 for beasts only. In case you're wondering what are beasts, it's all the Fleabag Riders in this army. Then we have Grony Snark, of course, with Jared's Pendant giving Aura Headstrong. Now, Grony has changed since that tournament, in that Grony, who is an incredibly overpowered character, used to also have Blast D3, period. So the short bow is Blast D3, the melee is Blast D3, all of it was. And now it is just Blast D3 melee, which is worse, but Grony's still, very overpowered. Anyway, fun to play though. Following that, we have a Wiz with the Crown of the Wizard King, +1 Spellcaster, and of course Host Shadow Beast 8. We have Grupp, Longnail, and then Gorp's Explodomatic Bangsticks, the Goblin formation. One of my favorite formations in the game. It has 2 regiments of Fleabag Riders, both of whom I've chosen to give Mop-Ups, and then one has the Potion of the Caterpillar, the other has Boots of Striding. And then I have Gorp himself, a King on Fleabag, and I've given them the Scythe of the Harvester. Now, this is a fun formation, I say before. I generally don't run Caterpillar or Pathfinder or terrain solving items onto Cav, which I've harped on before again and again, but I will say for this type of a unit, it really works because 1, they only hit on a 4+, they're not 3+ Cav. 2, they kill themselves. So Gorp's Explodomatic, the rules for it is that the Fleabag Riders, they both gain +1 Thunderous Charge, which is of course great, so now they're Thunder 2, and then every 6 that they roll to hit explodes, so they get 2 hits for every 6, but they also take 1 point of damage themselves. So that's why I don't bother giving them, like a Brew of Strength or anything like that. I've messed around with Helm of the Drunken Ram, but, Thunderous 2 tends to be enough. And then Gorp himself gains Aura Elite for Cavalry with the Goblin keyword, so again, all of my Fleabag Riders, and then also Goblin Chariots, which I did not bring, but it works on them too. And the Scythe of the Harvester is a fun one just because it obviously gives Rampage, which is great, but more importantly, Rampage also works on Gorp's Shortbow because it is part of his base stats. It's not, I can't remember how they worded it, but anytime you have in the FAQ about Rampage and Slayer, they made it so anytime an item or ranged attack is in your not in your base stats, so your 5 attacks, then you have the short bow, right? That you get Rampage and Slayer for. But if you have, say, a gun like the Halfling Engineer that just says it's 3 shots, hits on a 3, so on and so forth, well, that it doesn't work on. Which is interesting because I'm pretty sure it specifically targeted Bangits, because Bangits are so good, and obviously it was kind of ridiculous to have them with Rampage, but then they had to change the Bangit to get that to work, so just kind of funny how that worked out. Anyway, I digress. This list is also 10 points down. I couldn't figure out how to spend them. I could have just thrown a mop-up onto some rabble, but I didn't bother. It didn't really matter too much to me. So anyway, moving forward into Invade. Invade is, at the end of the game, add up the total unit strength of each player's units that have the majority of their footprint on the opposing player's half of the board. This is the total number of victory points that each player scores. So Invade is emblematic of what I don't like about scenarios in Kings of War. It's just, at the end of the game, on turn 6, push all your stuff across the line and hope there isn't a turn 7. So not my favorite, but still a simple one, so it's got that going for it. Anyway, here is the table. We open with 3 height 6 forests, just sort of, around. Following 2 height 3 hills. We actually have both hills, at least part of one, in deployment zones. Now, the thing about hills and deployment zones is I'm sure a lot of you are like, oh, you never do that. Well, you don't do that if you're doing, say, dot deployment, which is not my favorite type of deployment, but you can do it if you have a set board. You just have to make sure that when you build the table, you put stuff to block that line of sight. So with this forest here, this height 3 hills in the center of a deployment zone, but the firing lanes are significantly limited, right? And this one over here, it's similar, right? So you have these firing lanes, but you can't fire past these forests. And then, of course, this large piece of blocking terrain takes up most of that hill. Now, I would prefer if this hill, I did set up the table, or I helped set up the table, I should say, was not central. I probably should have placed it a little off to the side so it doesn't have, as much free reign as it does. But otherwise, it's fine to do. Just don't put too many of them, right? And don't make them too big, and then make sure that you're creating firing lanes, not just having complete control over the table. Anyway, I digress. Let's move forward. We have 3 height 2 obstacles, followed by 3 height 9 pieces of blocking terrain. I think we generally run these a little shorter, but it just seemed good with these taller pillars to run them a little taller. And then this one over here is actually on a hill, so it's actually height 12. So nothing seeing over that. So with that said, let's go over the armies. We open with the dwarves. I didn't put out any fancy placards this time because I just couldn't be bothered. It's been a long year so far. So anyway, we have our first 2 regiments of shield breakers, both of them with throwing mastiffs, and then back here is the troop of Brock Riders with the Pathfinder and skirmishers boots, so nimble. To the right of that, we have the largest model on the smallest base I've seen, I think, in the game. This is my opponent's Eric, with the Wings of the Honey Maze being represented by this griffin. I actually always like the Wildhammer dwarves in Warcraft's lore, so I'm cool with this. Then we have the 3rd regiment, the 3rd mallet in Eric's repertoire. We have just sitting right there with the throwing mastiffs. And to the right of that, we have both the regiments of pathfinding Brock Riders, and behind them, both the regiments of mastiffs. Right here is Garrick Heavyhand, a lovely Mantic model. I don't think Mantic makes a Garrick model proper, do they? This is just the Dwarf Lord model, which is actually pretty cool. I actually like the Mantic dwarfs quite a bit. To the right of that, we have Severi Egalax. And right here, we have both the regiments of Berserkers chilling out in the forest. Of course, they have Pathfinder now. I do like them significantly more than in the previous, or before Clash 22, but I'll talk about that at the end of the video, I hope. And finally, we have my opponent's regiment of Rangers, of course, with Hernius' handpicked upgrade and the Chant of Hate. Now let's move on to the Goblin side. Facing up against those Rangers, we have the 1st troop and 2nd troop of Fleabag Riders, with the 1st regiment of Fleabag Riders being back here. They are the J-Boots ones. And right here is, of course, Gorp chilling out with their Rampage, right, sword? I forgot what the Scythe of the Harvester is called for a second. Right here. If you ever see the squigs on the table, those are marking my mobbies, of course. So we have the 2nd Regiment of Fleabag Riders, of course, with the Pathfinder, and then the Goblin Slasher with the Aura for the Rampage for Beasts. And to the right of that, we have the first and second horde of Goblin Rabble. You can see what I was talking about. So these guys I had the goblins painted, obviously not the bases, but I had the goblins painted and ready to go before the 3-day period, and then these guys were painted after, right? Same thing with all the squigs and all this stuff, right? Anyway, and right behind them we have both the mop-up launchers and of course the Goblin Whiz with Host Shadow Beast 8 and plus 6 inches on targets that are spells that target my own models. So when I target something with the Crown of the Wizard King makes it so when I target someone with my Host Shadow Beast, I can do it from within 18 inches instead of 12. To the right of that, we have Grony, Snark, and Grop chilling out here. We have the third and final horde of Rabble, and behind them the first, the second, and the third War Trombone. To the right of that, we have the first and second Winged chilling out there. You can see one of the Ornithopters has lost their wing, and this regiment of Rabble has taken it. So these things fall off all the time. They're a pain in the ass to pin, and I don't bother. So I have a bunch of these old Gyrocopters. So anyway, that's the army. Let's move on to turn 1. So turn 1 ends up going to the Goblins. On the left flank here, I just scoot forward with my Rabble. My plan is just to utilize this fence to mess around with my opponent. Now, it was interesting because I'm looking at this picture now. Actually, let's go back. Yeah. So, and during this game, there's a point in it where my opponent was like, yeah, I don't want to, like they weren't trying to make a big deal of it or anything. And they're like, but this fence keeps moving, right, a little bit. And I'm like, in my head, I was thinking, I'm not sure how much it's actually moved, but yeah, looking at this picture, it's been here since turn 1. So I'm not sure if it actually moved that much, especially as I don't move this, or that this Rabble regiment just sort of chills here for a while. But I digress. It doesn't matter too much because even if it were pointing more like this, it's actually such a long piece of terrain that there's always going to be a piece of it sticking out. And my point is that these guys have Pathfinder, but not Strider. So if they want to get into this regiment of Rabble, they are going to end up being hindered. Not that it takes much to kill Rabble. But anyway, so I move forward with my Rabble to mess around with my opponent. You can see this is how the scout moves go. I did find it interesting that they didn't move Eric really aggressively. I probably would have, because they could have moved Eric aggressively and still inspired these two. And my shooting, while potent, is probably not going to be able to take down a Dwarf Lord, especially if you just stay out of range of the War Trombones for turn 1. And these guys only have a 12-inch range, so if I want to shoot at you, I have to be within charge range. But I guess it makes a sort of sense just because I'm going to make it so my War Trombones can't be charged because it's only height 2. So it's not going to be able to see me over my Goblin. And then the much taller Wingets, I just place in such a way where there's no way 20 mil base can land, right? So, well, this one I don't because it doesn't matter. Eric can't get to me. But in general, I'll just be doing that. Anyway, I move forward with Grupp right here. The plan is to just threaten these shield breakers? Yeah, shield breakers. Because I can charge on a path here. You can't quite see it, but I can charge on a straight path here because when you charge, you take the quickest route possible, which has been defined as the one with the least pivots. So when I charge forward, I can make it so if my opponent moves to within 9 inches to be able to charge this Rabble Horde, I will be able to charge them without being hindered. And that's the plan with Grupp. And off here to the right, we see the Rabble. These guys go a little faster. Oh, I should say, actually, let's go back a pick. These Rabble only go forward 5 because my War Trombones can only go forward 5, so just keep them together. And then these Rabble go forward a little bit more just because they can. Now, I do make it, you can't see in this picture, but you'll see it later. Grony flies into this forest because I want Grony to be able to see anything I want to charge later, which means that I actually push the Rabble Horde back because Grony is so powerful, I'd rather push back 2 hordes of Rabble than inconvenience Grony at all. So anyway, that's why they're there. Now, I do move forward this Cav side. My plan here, and my opponent and I were talking through it, and they wanted to sort of have a game where we would talk through all of our moves. I have a hard time doing that because I don't know what I'm going to do until I do it. Not much of a schemer. But my opponent wanted to talk through it, and it's like, yeah, with dwarves, you do kind of, if this is the table, you want to do a refuse flank. So you just deploy over here, right? You ignore that, and then you just castle up over here. And once we were talking about that, it's like, yeah, that's pretty standard for dwarves. You can put a token unit over here if you want, but because I'm so much faster than they are, right? These are all speed 10 units. I just waited for my opponent's Brock Riders to go down and then deployed away from them. So if this is the table, my cav were deployed over here on my right flank, but if the Brock Riders had been over here, I would have just deployed left. And if they were deployed centrally, right, well, I don't know what I'd do, but probably still deploy over here because I had a big piece of blocking terrain on the left. But anyway, I move forward with my cav. I do make a positioning error, actually two. One with my measuring. I thought I had measured the slasher to be so it can move 7 and then have its leader point outside of the forest. So when I shoot, I'm not going to take a cover penalty. I actually missed that by like a millimeter. But anyway, I missed it. So that was a mild deployment mistake. And then here's a bigger one, which is I run Gorp just sort of reflexively to hide behind this troop of Fleabag Riders. I'm not sure that was a great idea just because the Rangers are not going to be able to shoot at Gorp anyway. I could have had them right here, right? And it would have made it a lot easier for when my opponent shoots into these guys and maybe wavers them, because I can pivot easier, right? But I do maintain my distance with this unit, so if this unit pivots, I do not clip them. So I'll just have to move the king first. But anyway, mistake is a mistake. And over here, just showing off, yeah, that's where Grony ended up being. You can see these guys being forced back. Just showing off that my Wiz is about to, it just moved forward to take a shot onto my opponent's Sverry. I actually do 2 damage, which is pretty good considering I'm only Lightning Bolt 3 and they had cover, but still 2 damage. Nice. And over here, I fire with my, whatever the bolt thrower on the back of this thing is called. And this is another model that was already painted, and not by me. I don't know where the Howdah went. But anyway, I fire off. My opponent does have cover because I'm firing through the forest I moved into, but I still hit once and do 1 wound to this unit of Berserkers. So that's going to do it for my shooting, and we move on to Dwarf turn 1. I forgot to take an end of turn shot, but you'll see it at the end of the dwarf turn anyway for the positioning. So anyway, the mallets just sort of move forward a little bit. This mallet moves forward to be hyper aggressive, which I agree with. I mean, I would probably play these guys very aggressively, but they do make sure that all the goblins are in their front arc. It might not look like it, but it's just a perfect measurement to make sure. So anyway, that's how they end up. We've got these guys just staying in the backfield. Now the point is that this unit is a little bit farther back than you might be expecting, and it's because the Wingit cannot land behind them. It's impossible. So that's the plan there, and I think the same thing with this unit of hammers, although that one might not worry my opponent at all because, they can just charge into it anyway. But anyway, then we have the dogs moving forward. And here in the center, you can see the Brock Riders are like, oh, that's a lot of cav over there. We should probably reposition. So they use their speed 8 to do just that, turning to face me. Really good that they come with that Pathfinder now. It really helps them out. Just be able to go like, yeah, fuck a forest. I'll go right through it. And same thing for these Berserkers, which I find all this positioning quite interesting. I was having a conversation, I believe, actually, with the guy you can see kind of right here. And I kind of missed this, but I probably should have talked through this a little bit with my opponent, just because they wanted to talk through their movements in the game. I'm looking at this and going, Sverry is Sverry exposed. I'm not in love with that positioning because they could have tilted this unit just a little bit more, right? And or held Sverry back a little bit, just to make sure that Sverry couldn't be charged. And that's my only real problem with this positioning. Otherwise, I think it's pretty good. Although these Brock Riders are kind of facing weirdly, right? Maybe there was no way to make them... Yeah, I bet that they just had to do this to actually get over here. So that makes sense. But anyway, that's where they end up. And then the Rangers, their scout move just turned them towards my battle line. I actually really like the idea of deploying them to the side right there because it was a wall exactly on the 12-inch, or just slightly lower than 12 inches, but exactly on the deployment line, which makes it so this unit could either scout and redeploy this way, right? If it wanted to, it could pivot and go 5 this way, or it could just pivot and stay here. It depends on what I did with my deployment. And since I outdropped my opponent by a lot, I think that this was a rather clever play. So anyway, they just turn and they're gonna weather the storm, I guess. And let's see how that goes. So first off, we have, the throwing mastiffs firing into my regiment of rabble, who are also not inspired because I don't think that there's much of a point to it. They managed to do 3 damage to them with all those dogs and not get a waiver, so pretty cool with me. And over here we have the Rangers firing off, doing 3 wounds to my troop in the front, managing a waiver just barely, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's pretty cool that they gave these guys all that plus nerve. I mean, they used to be 9-11 for the troop, and now they're 10-12, so I'm really into that. Anyway, so end up with a wavered unit there, and that'll be the end of turn shot that I was promising from before. As you can see, I actually... Man, this looks pretty cool. I like that, that classic goblin on dwarf nonsense, right? Looks neat. You can see I'm sort of trying to set up to take this center and then fight off. My plan with the mallets is just to put my shooting over here and kill as many as I can before Eric probably comes and starts wrecking all these things anyway, right? That's why the trombones are over here. And then off here on the right, I plan to just suicide in my cav and hope that they last long enough to cause problems in the center. Then I can just move forward with my rabble and take the center there. So that's going to be the plan. Anyway, let's see how it all goes in turn 2. So turn 2 for the goblins. First off, I move forward with my units. I abandon this wall that I was spending all that time talking about. But I just advance forward. The point is to guard the flank for this unit, and that is because now this looks like, there's a missing unit or 2. That is because I forgot to take a picture during the beginning of the turn, but I charged in with Grupp right here, as I was saying before, into the flank of one of the mallets. I charged into the front with my rabble because I wanted to make sure that they died, because as much as Host Shadowbeast is the big boogeyman right now, right? Like, oh, Host Shadowbeast 8, and like all these goblins have Blast D3 melee. It is really fun. It's really good, and I can see why people are mad about it in the same way that you'd be mad about like War Engine spam. The problem with it is that it's very, very unreliable. So I've played quite a few games now running all the Goblin Blast and Host Shadowbeast, and I can tell you that it very commonly just gets your heroes killed when you roll a little low, right? Or maybe you fail with a blast. The point is that there's a lot of points of failure for this strategy, but it is very fun. So anyway, with that said, I move forward with the Wiz. I cast Host Shadowbeast onto Grupp. I do get +4, so the average, but I sent this Rabble Horde in as well just to make sure that the mallets went down. And then I also send Grony into this dog pack because from where Grony lands, the other dog pack can't charge me. The only thing that can is Eric. And while Eric might be able to one-shot me, is more likely to get a waiver because Grony is a 12-14, right? So, going in there with 5 attacks, let's say 3 hit, 3 wound even, that's still not the best chance of even wavering me. And I do, of course, have Headstrong. So that was the plan. I go in there. Grony, of course, has 5 attacks, Blast D3 plus Thunder 2, Crush 1. So I go into the dogs. I do a fair bit of damage, and I get a waiver, which is nice. Again, dog nerve is pretty high. I think they're on 11-13. So I feel good about that. The waiver really helps me out. Make sure that Eric can't just, double charge kill him. So anyway, and then I move forward with this troop of rabble just to block the possible flank charge, and then move forward with my Wingits. And that way I was talking before to make sure that Eric cannot charge me because he cannot land. So that's the plan. And then the Wingits both fire at the mallets and do incredibly well, managing to kill them off with the help from my mop-up launcher a little bit. I move forward with my War Trombones. They're having a bit of a traffic jam here. I'm not the best at these guys, and it's because I normally play, when I've been playing these, I've been playing Ratkin, which theirs are nimble, and I don't know, War Trombones are significantly harder to use. I mean, that said, the Ratkin weapon team is the best version of this in the game. I currently think. I haven't tried out the dwarf one. I'm excited to do so, but having nimble and having speed 6 is just so good on a def 5, little quote breath engine. But anyway, let's go off to the right. You can see my rabble just advanced forward. This rabble advances to get their leader point into the forest so I can see what's going on, but I'm out of charge. Well, these guys can't see me, but I'm out of charge range of Garrick, and it'll have to be dogs if they want to charge me, and Brock Riders, I guess, if they want. And then I charge in with all these units. So this is the unit that was wavered. As I mentioned before, they can pivot freely, and then back up 5 because they are nimble and have speed 10. So I back up 5, end up where I am, and then that allows me. Now I do have to move my king in sort of like a weird way, but I move my king after I get a charge from the unit that was in the forest. I charge into the berserkers that were right here. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's Sverri Egalax, as I mentioned before, a little exposed, and I was like, yeah, just pick that up when you can. So I go into Sverri, and then I have my unit with the J-boots. I pop them, I charge over this wall into the unit of berserkers that were right there, and then I have the troop that was somewhere like around here, maybe, charge, using their nimble, so they, they pivot, blah, 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 you know how nimble charges work. So I go in here, into the Rangers. It is a hindered charge, but I also managed to fire a mop-up onto this. So I pop my mop-up, I don't roll terribly well with it, which is, it's what happens. And then I'm rolling to hit. I did forget I was elite with this unit because I forgot about the aura. Oh no, I forgot about both these auras. So I forgot I was elite, and I forgot that I was not Slayer, Rampage. So I didn't roll that, but I'm not too worried about it. It's like it's D3 more attacks on a 5+ to hit unit. 5+ to hit, 4+ to wound. Anyway, it could have mattered. I did miss the waiver by 1, and of course Rangers do not have Headstrong, but I digress. Anyway, you can see here, I did also manage on the previous turn, I think, to fire a mop-up onto this horde just to, because a little bit of extra damage. It's how the hordes kill anything. So anyway, that's going to do it. So yeah, I managed to kill off Sverri here. I killed off that regiment of berserkers. I was really hoping to get a waiver on the Rangers, but I'll take what I can get. And then I'm a little traffic jam, so like I back up. This unit can only just back up. Sverri's unit just sort of sits here to protect flanks and just ready themselves to get pummeled by the dwarf cavalry. So anyway, these just showing off those combats. We got that one. Yep. And of course, so I did 4 damage to them. They're 14-16, so I believe I rolled a 9. So anyway, good roll though. So that's going to be the end of turn end of turn for the goblins. Let's see how the dwarves respond. So the dwarf response is, of course, to charge. So first off, we've got the hammers charging into my wounded unit of goblin rabble. That regiment's probably about to die. Eric decides to not go into Grony, and I think that's a rather astute plan because Grupp is right there, right? And Grupp is a duelist. So even without Host Shadow Beast, that's 8 attacks on 3s to hit with D3 each and Crush 1, and Eric is only Def 5. Because of the Wings of the Honey Maze. So I rather like that idea of just going like no Grupp, no. So anyway, flies over here just to protect itself from getting shot by War Trombones as well, and then readies the troop for a countercharge later. The dogs back up, of course, away from Grony. And over here, things are a bit of a mess. First off, down here, we have these dogs charging into my rabble. I believe they do not have Pathfinder, so that's a hindered charge there. We have a regiment of Brock Riders going to one of my rabble hordes. I'm not too worried about that. They'd have to roll pretty insane to even get a waiver. And then we've got the Slayers going into my first unit of Fleabag Rider regiments. Oh, also, both of these took 4 damage. They rolled the exact same thing against Sverri and those Rangers, or in those Berserkers. So they're already at 4 damage. They're probably about to die. This is what I mean by they're just kind of guided missiles. Another thing to look at in the future might be, like the Crystal Pendants, interesting. I just feel like they're really easy to kill with shooting, right? Like they're going to damage themselves even, so just plink them a little bit. But it is something to consider. So anyway, my opponent goes in there. The Rangers countercharge into my troop, probably about to kill them. That's fair. But, and that's going to do it for the charges. And there's, of course, no shooting. So let's see how that all goes. First off, we have the first regiment of mallets goes into my already wounded unit of rabble, managing 9 wounds and only getting a waiver, rolling the first 3 of the game. And I'm like, that's pretty bad. That's a horde of rabble looking at your flank. Over here, we have the Berserkers doing a little bit better, managing to kill off one of my regiments of Fleabag Riders. And then these Berserkers actually doing quite well. 9 wounds, that's on the low side of average, I think. They've got 26 attacks, 13 with Vicious. Yeah, like 9 wounds, not that bad. But they roll the big 11 for a waver here. Now, they only needed a 10, but they did roll an 11, and I end up wavered, and I'm like, damn. Like, this was a pretty sexy charge, right? I have a flank charge there, and I've got a mop up to use, and I'm like, oh, that sucks. But anyway, cool for my opponent. And over here, well, things are in swings and roundabouts, right? The Rangers go in, only managing to waver my troop of Fleabag Riders, which I'm quite okay with. That means they'll have to kill them again later. And here's the end of turn shot. Now, I know I didn't take a picture of this. I just forgot. But yeah, they pummel that unit to death. So both of Gorp's Explodomatic guys are dead, but Gorp himself ready to rock against Garrick? Seems like a bad charge, but anyway, it could. But that'll do it for turn 2. Let's move into turn 3. So turn 3 for the Goblins. It goes how you might expect. I just sit still with this regiment of rabble. Now, there has been some rule confusion about this, and I believe the current rule states that if you want to disengage, you must be able to withdraw the full inch, right? And I wanted my Wingets to be able to shoot at, I think the dogs is what I want to shoot at, because they're both within 12. And I couldn't position myself in such a way where I could disengage one and have them protected against Garrick in the same way that I mentioned before, so they just remain engaged. They are, of course, wavered, so they're not going to be attacking. And I don't quite buy the idea that you have to countercharge to be able to attack. I don't actually think that's true. It reads kind of both ways in the charge category. The line that I'm specifically talking about is in charging, it states for close combat, you choose any engaged units to attack with. And I'm like, well, if you remained engaged, you're engaged. And it is a bit of a problem because wavered, I believe, doesn't actually state you don't attack. But I chose to, obviously to go like, yeah, that's ridiculous. That's obviously unintended. So I just don't attack with this unit. And then I charge into the flank with my horde here. And then Grupp goes in to finish off the dogs that Grony started. Hopefully I can do that. And then I move forward with all my war trombones to start shooting into the center because the mallets folded so quickly. So anyway, and then I countercharge into these dogs because screw them. And off here on the right, you can see, yeah, we just remain engaged because I don't see a point in withdrawing. I could have done it if I didn't want to charge, right? But I wanted that juicy flank, right? Like, I have a 10 attack slasher that's going to be 20 attacks on 3s and then 2s to wound. And I'm like, yeah, I want it. So I take it. I can also protect myself against the Berserker charge because when I back up with this nimble unit of Fleabag Riders away from the Rangers I was fighting, I can make it so they can't actually fit between the Brock Riders and and my unit. Even if they reformed a charge over here, they'd have to leave the combat, right? They could withdraw one and disengage a little bit to make that flank charge happen, but then they'll get flank charged and killed. So I left it open to my opponent. They do have Slayers, so that might be good. But anyway, I did the best I could. And then I go for a weird double charge here. I've got Grony Snark in the side, and then I have Gorp in the front. And I was like, I think I could do it so, like, I get a Host Shadow Beast onto Grony, right? And then I realized that, like, obviously I can't see Grony. So I'm like, okay, I'll just run over here then, just sit here. Because I don't have really good Lightning Bolt targets either, and I want to be able to target either of these heroes with my Host Shadow Beast in subsequent turns. So anyway, we go over that. And let's go through the combats, or starting with the left. I do fire, by the way. I fire. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention this. So the other unit that had been wavered by the Rangers in turn 1 decide now to just charge in. So my second troop goes in, and I slap another Mob Beast onto them, and then my other Mob Beast launcher fires into the Brock Rider troop that my Wingets are fighting. So anyway, we have a fight right here. My horde and, not my regiment, just the horde. No, I must have fired here. Anyway, whatever. My horde kills off the mallets right there. I'm feeling quite good about that. Take it, dwarves, goblin forever. Right over here, I fire. Oh, it looks like, I managed to kill off those dogs on the countercharge with my horde of rabble. Rabble killing 2 units this turn and 3 units in this game. Ignore Grupp. Right here, I managed to get into the side. I do 10 wounds, and I'm pretty happy about that. But don't roll the. I think they're an 18, some ridiculous nerve. So I don't kill them off. Womp womp. But anyway, still cool stuff. Up here we have Gorp and Grony managing to do a decent number of wounds. I think it's 9 onto the other regiment. Of course, they don't kill them, but I feel rather good about that because they're going to have to make a choice about which one of these they want to fight. Although they'll probably kill whichever one they do. I think the other one will be able to finish them off next turn. So anyway, cool stuff. And over here, yeah, my troop again goes in. I'm not sure what those wounds are at, but it's not high because I fail once again. So I have my mop up, I roll it, it does Bubkiss. Then I have 7 plus D3 attacks. I remember this time. Oh, maybe no, or maybe I'm out of range. Either way, I did remember about Rampage on after I failed to roll it in the previous turn. But anyway, I get in here with my 5 plus to hit. I am elite. And vicious, but just not enough to even get a waiver. And I'm like, I would have really liked that waiver. Would have been nice. But anyway, that'll do it. And then a very weird picture, very artsy picture, apparently my phone took, of Grupp destroying those dogs. So they're out of here. And here is the end of turn shot. Yeah, it looks like I would be in range for that Rampage. But either way, I did fail it. So I did manage to fire at the Brock troop over here. They're pretty hard to kill off. I mean, I do ignore the cover, but my D3, my blast D3 Wingets, while very good, are still kind of swingy, right? They're not going to always kill everything they shoot at. So anyway, things work out pretty well. Let's see what the dwarves do in response. So dwarf turn 3, we have the troop, and yeah, so the troop goes into my horde, right? And Eric goes into my rabble regiment. They're already at 9 wounds. They're at 12-14, so 1 wound to not double 1 waiver seems pretty good. Then over here we have the regiment of Brock Riders deciding to fight my horde of rabble. That seems very smart, considering they're already at 9 wounds. They could have, of course, countercharged here, but I think removing this rabble is more important, and just hoping that my dice fail me, which I am goblin, so it's bound to happen. And then we have the regiment of berserkers just choosing to kill off my troop of Fleabag Riders. Seems fair. We have the regiment of Brock Riders here deciding to strike down Gorp. Also seems fair. And then Garrick going into Grony Snark. Again, I'm not thinking that Garrick can kill me or even really get a realistic waiver on Grony in 1 turn, but it is possible, although, of course, I have Headstrong as well, so a bit mitigated there. And then, I don't know if I mentioned it, but the Rangers countercharge into this troop of wounded Fleabag Riders. So anyway, let's see how that all goes. First off, we have the Horde fighting. Did they do 0? There's no way. We'll see at the end of the picture. But anyway, we have the regiment. I'm sorry, yeah, the regiment of Brock Riders again wavering my unit, but this time they're at 14 wounds, so it was only a 5. But they get the waiver, not the kill. I'm okay with that, of course. Up here, the Slayers managed. They're not Slayers. The Berserkers managed to kill off my troop of Fleabag Riders. We have the Rangers killing off the other. They're at 7 wounds. Yeah. But yeah, couldn't roll that 7. Damn. The Rangers here managed to kill off my troop of Fleabag Riders. And up here we have Garrick going into Grony, doing 3 wounds to him. Or to her, and not getting the waiver, thankfully. And then even weirder, this regiment of Brock Riders, again, 26 attacks on 4s and 4s, because I did take their Thunderous away, and Vicious, managing 8 wounds onto Gorp here, and rolling the second 3 of the game. So, again, not even getting a waiver. I'm like, oof, that's rough. That's a rough roll. So here's the end of turn shot. As you can see, the dwarves are struggling, but all they really need is 1 break this game, or the goblins to just inevitably implode. So they're still in it. They've got plenty of unit strength over here, as long as they can weather the storm and just sort of kill off my damage dealers and then be able to deal with these rabble. They can at least push for a tie. So let's see what happens in turn 4. So turn 4 for the goblins. I, of course, move one of my Wingets right behind this troop of Brock Riders who got countercharged by my horde. The plan is to just start planning to score with these Wingets because, of course, flyers are great scorers, and also maintain my shot onto Eric. I move this one to be impossible to charge by Eric, so, that little trick again. And then I move forward into the forest with my War Trombones, hoping to snipe someone down. Off here, you can see, actually, I block one of my War Trombones with the other War Trombone, but we're getting there, right? 5 inches a turn, we'll do it. But I do have a clean shot onto this regiment of Berserkers. And then I take Grony into the flank of the 9-wound Brock Riders. Grony does not have the Thunder right now, but does have the 5 attacks on 4s with Blast D3 and Crush 1. I do, of course, fail Grony's weird Cloak of Death move, and then I run Grupp over here, because another thing about Grony is that at the beginning of Grony's activation, you roll a die, and on a 1, all units within 6 take 1 point of damage, which means that you can, of course, move the Goblin units later or first before Grony to get them out of range, and then roll it. So I roll it there after running off with Gorp into the flank of these Rangers, hoping that a third Guiding Wolf will do it. And then after I roll it, I run forward with Grupp because, Garruk Heavy Hands here. That's the only individual, well, there's Eric, but the individual that can't get away from me that I can fight. And then I just sit here, remain engaged against the other regiment of Berserker Brock Riders, and then again flank charge them with my big ol' slasher. So that'll do it. Let's see how it all goes. First off, we have my horde of rabble managing to kill off that troop of wounded Brock Riders. Seems good, but these rabble are really getting work in this game. And then I fire at Eric. I only do 1 wound. Fair. Up here, a slaughter happens with the Brock Riders. They're killed off by my slasher, who turns to face towards the Berserkers right there. Over in this corner, we Grony manages. Actually, if we go back, I need to go back a few actually. So I also move forward with my Wiz this turn because I can cast Host Shadow Beast onto Grony. So yikes. And Grony, so Grony gets +4 attacks just like Grupp before her and manages to kill off the regiment of Brock Riders. Even weirder, Gorp goes into the regiment of wounded Scouts? What are they called? Rangers. I forgot for a second. Brain fart. And I only do 2 wounds. I don't roll a 6, so I don't hurt myself, but I do manage to kill them. So I just roll back-to-back, or not back-to-back. It's not inspired. So I do roll a 7 that time, kill them off. So I'm feeling quite good. And then with my shooting, I managed to put a decent number of wounds onto these Slayers. Now, Garruk does have Radiance of Life, so has been healing 1 damage off of all the units. So I'm feeling pretty good about doing 6 because, it's going to stick down to at least 5, which is a great roll. And up here's the end of turn shot for the Goblins. Things are looking quite dire for the Dwarves. They only have 1 scoring unit left on the table, and, the Goblins have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 scoring units left. Yikes. So we'll have to see what they can do. At least they can exact revenge, really start tearing these stupid Goblins down. And we'll move forward onto... So first off, the Berserkers charge into my Slasher. They hit the Boxcar Waver, so that was kind of funny. Slashers do not have any way to mitigate this, although I believe I could have just walked Grony over, as I believe it's Aura Headstrong, period, for Jared's Pendant, so because it works on Trolls. So I probably should have done that to activate the Headstrong, but I forgot. And anyway, over here we have Garruk making it kind of a moot point by just executing Grony on the spot. And I'm like, aw, I wanted to use my Aura Headstrong. And up here, Eric charges into one of my Wingets, doing 2 damage to it and only getting a Disorder, so I guess I can countercharge if I wanted. And here is the end of turn 4 shot for the Dwarves, as they make me pay for every ounce of Dwarf blood spilled. But Goblins laugh with glee and move on to turn 5. So Goblin turn 5, I believe I just walk away with the Winget and try to shoot at Garruk with the other Winget, and then one of my mop-up launchers can fire there. And then I just keep going with the Rabble Horde. And over here, all 3 of my War Trombones are now completely able to see these Slayers. I back up the Inch with my doesn't quite look like an Inch, but I assure you, I mean, I easily could have. This rival horde didn't do anything, but I just disengaged here. Maybe we bumped it. Doesn't matter. Point being, I just set myself up to shoot this down. I charge in with Grupp into Garruk, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna host Shadow Beast here. It's gonna be hilarious. And then I just move over here again with Gorp, because again I have 5 plus D3 bow shots to contribute to this fight as well. So that's going to be the turn. Let's see how it goes. First off, I get this unit up to 18 wounds. I'm gonna attribute that completely to Gorp and nothing to the War Trombones, who definitely it was all Gorp though. And Grupp gets +4 attacks as well. Everyone's getting the average here, or the mean. And here is the end of turn 5 shot. So of course I don't do much to Eric. That's fair. And then everything else melts. So I managed to kill off the Berserkers. I don't double one that. And then Grupp, of course, has 16 attacks, because 4 plus 4 for the Host Shadow Beast. Then you double for Duelist. So 16 attacks on 3s that turn into D3 each due to my blast. And then, I roll 5 plus to wound, because Garruk is def 6, but still a pretty funny bit. I think I did like an absurd 13 or 14 wounds, because I rolled really well in my blast. But and this is what people are really worried about with that Host Shadow Beast plus blast combo. And I wouldn't be too hurt if they changed it. Same thing with Duelist or Mikael's ability. If they changed it just to say you get the bonus attacks, but you don't benefit from Blast or Duelist, right? I think that'd be okay. But honestly, I don't really care either way. The problem was with Goblin Whizzes, damn it. So anyway, that's Goblin turn 5. Let's see what it all looks like with the dwarves. Here it is. So we have Eric charging into my Winged, not managing to kill it, and that'll be the end of the game, because my opponent's like, of course, it's impossible to win, and it's not going to be super fun for either of us. Like, Eric might be able to kill my Winged, right? But I'm just not going to bother. Like, my turn is just going to be not fighting at all and automatically winning. So anyway, we stop there. For my unit strength across the table, I have 1, 2, 5, 8, 11, 12. So it's going to be 12-0. So a victory for the Goblins. And with that said, we'll move on to the conclusions and list discussion. So first off, I don't have many conclusions to say about the game itself. As I've said before, I don't hate the fact that you have the Host Shadow Beast plus Blast combo. I think it's a negative play experience, though. I guess my point is, if I were to organize my thoughts, I think about this a lot in terms of competitive play versus sort of for fun play, right? Which is, if you're going for that top tournament spot, you're probably not going to bring a bunch of like Grupp Host Shadow Beast combos, because they are combos and they fail quite easily. Again, they have a lot of points of failure. So if you're going for a podium spot, you're not going to bring them anyway, because you want that consistency. So with that said, it doesn't really change the top echelons of tournaments to nerf it. And then the more medium, right? So again, like, you're going for that 3-2 record at best at a tournament. You're just looking to get over 50% or play your game down at your LGS or your friend's house or whatever. And those people are impacted quite heavily by this combo, because it, you remember that time where your opponent showed up and just got a bunch of Host Shadow Beasts up and, blast D3 and just obliterated your thing. Or Mikael, got +8 attacks and walked right through your Kraken or whatever it was. And it's like, yeah, so that doesn't feel particularly great. So a nerf here I would expect to be coming, and I would expect it to take the form of you can never multiply out the attacks from Host Shadow Beast. So you can't use Blast, you can't use Duelist, you can't use Mikael, anything like that. And as I said before, I don't really care either way. I think it's super fun to play it, but I can understand, it would be frustrating in one-off games, or again in the fat middle of a tournament, in the same way that War Engine spam was. Like, War Engine spam didn't light the world on fire. It wasn't super competitive, but it was super, super annoying, right? It sucked to play against. It just probably wasn't going to podium ever, unless it got really lucky. It's the same thing here. But I digress. I think Host Shadow Beast, yeah, that's a pretty reasonable nerf. As for the rest of the game, Yeah, unfortunately, I think my opponent just rolled a little poorly. And then, when goblins are hot, they're hot. So I didn't roll like super hot, but I did get some pretty sexy rolls out there. Especially my Host Shadow Beast always hitting the mean. That's obviously amazing. Anyway, about the list, I'll start with the dwarf list. I'm not too certain what I would do to this, as free dwarves are I don't know, they're a bit of an odd duck for me because I'm not in love with Brock Riders. I do see how powerful they are, right? I've lost against free dwarves plenty of times, and especially due to Brock Riders, but I don't play them. I played my dwarf army a lot back in the day, but mine is an old Warhammer army. Although I do have a Mantic dwarf army too, I just haven't put it together. But I'm just not much of a cav with my dwarves, right? So I haven't used them, and that's probably where I'd start to pull them out just so I could understand the list a little bit better. I do think Free Dwarf Berserkers are better than I thought. They are still a little pricey for that Def 4, and I'll talk about that in a second. But still, Dash 17, they have the Thunder now. If their special rule was better, I think it should be, which is, I think it should just say, while disordered, this unit gains Crushing 1. Because on a countercharge is not always what you want to do, because countercharges are always to the front. Right? So if you can have a charge where your unit gets charged here, and due to a piece of blocking terrain, you get charged by your enemy, right? And your dwarves here are like, well, my leader point's in your flank. I could just take a regular charge and get it there. But due to the Berserker special rule, you would not get to your Crushing 1 then. You would, or your Thunderous, because of course you're disordered. So I think if they changed it to just say, when disordered, this unit gets Crushing 1, at least that would feel a little bit better. But anyway, I don't think they're too bad. 180 is a little pricey for that though. I don't know. On the edge. I think they're a viable unit, not a competitive unit, I guess is how I'd phrase it. And again, I said I'd talk about this, but that's a lot of Def 4, and my opponent really got into it too, where it's like, yeah, it just seems like you get torn apart by shooting, you get torn apart by X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, it does seem that way. And I think, unfortunately, the answer for free dwarves is just, it's Earth Elementals, right? Like, they're Def 6, they're great. Your Stone Priest is an especially good wizard right now, just all around, right? Like, it could fall around Rangers, it's always Spellcaster 2, just natively, so it can just take Scorched Earth 2 with the Conjurer Staff, just seems really good. And it's a little unfortunate just because it feels shoehorned, but you can always play regular Imperial Dwarves, although again, please rename them. Don't call them dwarves, just call them Imperial Dwarves, so much cooler. But anyway, so I'm not too worried about it, right? Like, if you're a free dwarf player and you're like, yeah, it's a little boring, you could just play Imperial Dwarves too. So anyway, that's about all I have to say about the dwarf list. My goblin list, it is very fun. I keep playing this, I put it together, as I said, very quickly, just sort of threw it on the table. I love goblins. My first Warhammer army back in 2004 was just goblins, so I'm a huge fan. And obviously in King's War, they are quite powerful. So this is sort of my for funds list. Like, I love the fact that it self-destructs. I might put a few more things in that self-destruct in the future. And the only thing I haven't loved in a lot of games was the Goblin Slasher. It's, mine's 225 points for that aura, which, all the Fleabag Riders just explode anyway, so the aura doesn't matter too much, and then it ends up getting wavered and its gun does nothing. But I will say in this game, it felt really good, because the only reason the gun was as bad as it was due to my error, and then, that flank charge, it's 20 attacks on 3s with Crush 2 seems really solid, and it has Strider. The only thing I wish it had was Fury or Headstrong, and you can just bring Grony for that. So I'll definitely try that out in the future. Again, I like all the stuff in here. Grupp is great. Grupp's super fun, even without Host Shadow Beast, in case you're wondering. But Grony's a little overpowered, but I'll probably keep it anyway. So anyway, I guess my point being that anytime Fleabag Riders are part of a Goblin list, I think it's super fun. And that's what I was hoping for with this army, and that's what it delivers. So I'm pretty happy with it. So anyway, let me know what you guys think. You can leave a comment below, and until next time, bye.